And welcome to another edition of South Texas Crossfire. This is Attorney Joe Flores reminding you to join us each and every week right here on KTMB with the Lopez family. Special thanks to Don Humberto Lozano Lopez. He passed away in 2011, but he was my client and he's honored, he's venerated, he's never forgotten. And my good friend Carlos Lopez. Carlos, you always put God first in everything that you do. And I don't care if it's popular or not popular, but I believe the same way. If you put God first and you take care of your clients and your patients or whatever you do, the money will follow. I have the pleasure of introducing somebody who has worked with the system, created and innovated new policies, along with a great lawyer that he works with, who is waiting for a verdict as we speak, and we're going to talk about that, but we won't talk about the facts of the case. We can't do that. But we will say we've got a pair of great lawyers that were street lawyers like myself, and then they were elected, Mark was, and then he brought his lawyer that he practices with along for the ride, and it has been a great ride. And so I welcome Mark Gonzalez. Welcome, my friend.
How you doing, Joe? Good to see you, man.
Good to see you. It's an honor. I mean, I'm very honored. I mean, Texas Monthly, you got you on the New York Times, and then Comedy Central, you taking on that guy with the big, what do you call those big handlebar bicycles?
Well, we call them ape hangers.
Ape hangers.
And it was kind of a chopper, I guess. I don't know where they found that bike.
It was an awesome, awesome national scene. I saw that, and everybody was going to ask one thing: will he take off his shirt or not? And you said no, 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 no. And I think you only gave the semi, the not guilty.
Yeah.
Well,
I didn't take my shirt off completely, but,
no.
We opened it up.
No, I mean, you dignified the office by just showing the tattoo. But, a lot of people had a lot of doubts, as usual, and then they always say, there's the two lies that I always say in politics. I've been with you all along, and I voted for you. Now, that had been true, you'd have gotten 200,000 votes, right?
Yeah.
And it was a tight race. You found out. When did you find out when you won?
So I went to sleep that night not thinking that I won, and we just needed to wait. But there wasn't anything we can do, so it was literally 12 o'clock. We called it a night. Me and my girlfriend at the time, my wife now, went home. I disconnected everything from social media, turned off my phone, went home, locked up, and said I'll see it in the morning. And before I knew it, my brother was there. He was celebrating without me because we found out that we actually had won, to our surprise. So and that's kind of how this thing started.
It has been a fantastic journey. I have monitored your administration. I love what you've done with domestic violence on the one hand, with violence, but yet with nonviolent criminals, the policies that you've instituted. I don't really think that the very right or the very left realize how much money, they all pay taxes, whether they're left or right, how much you're saving. Let's talk about first your anti-violence programs, and there are a myriad of things that you have.
Sure. So one of the things that we've tried to implement is just common sense approach, right? We want to be smart on crime, but we want to also be tough on crime. So the cases that come through our office, we have both all the time. And the really hard cases, the ones that you hear about on the news, the ones where the pictures are gruesome, where they're victims of horrendous crimes, just like in the Arturo Garza case where we actually sought the death penalty, which is something that, it should be used very, 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 in a very responsible way. But in those cases, we have to take a stance where we don't want anyone to hurt our loved ones, right? But then you have other individuals who come in contact with the criminal justice system, and they've made mistakes, and hopefully they come into our office or our court system, they make those mistakes, they learn from them, and they move on, and they go about being productive citizens without having the impact of us leaving our footprint or fingerprint on their lives, which can cause them to not have employment or lose housing or whatever the case may be.
And you're referring to what's called pretrial diversion?
Sure.
So one of those examples is marijuana. Many people think of it as a gateway drug. In Colorado, they think of it as cash.
Sure.
DC too. But what's your view on marijuana as far as the law enforcement side of it? Why did you change the policy?
So what we wanted to do is not necessarily a marijuana type of, decriminalization. What we were trying to do is decriminalize or not incarcerate people who don't belong in jail. So we wanted to start off with the 7, which we just implemented, which is cite and release, right? If you get, typically, you would get arrested for the 7 misdemeanors. It's marijuana A, B, so that just differentiates the amount. Then you have theft A and B, which is just the amount as well, and mostly retail theft. Then you have criminal trespass, carrying contraband in a facility. And then I want to say the other one is synthetic cannabinoids, which are another problem that we could talk probably another whole hour about. But with that being the case, those individuals, all of those, were always going to jail. Now officers have the discretion whether or not to send them to jail or not. They can give them a citation and they avoid actually going to jail. So some of the criticism we say is based on the marijuana, right? But that's just a small part of what we're trying to do. But to be honest with you, we need to look to our neighbors to the north or even to the east and the west to see what they're doing. I mean, we have brothers, sisters, cousins in other states who are not having to go to jail for either engaging in or using recreational marijuana. And here in Texas, people are not only going to jail, they're losing their housing, because if you get a conviction for a drug case, even marijuana here in Texas, you're going to lose your housing. And that's federally too as well. And then if you go to school, if you're a student here and you get caught with marijuana, you're going to lose your financial aid. So we took a hard step and a look at that. And we don't want to be a part of, I guess, a process or a system that allows someone to lose housing or allows someone to actually lose their financial aid. And so that's why that was one of the first things we tried to do, because it was something we could do immediately without the infrastructure, without law enforcement being on board, doing PTDs, the pretrial diversions regarding the marijuana when we first came into office.
And you brought up A and B, so you mean Class A misdemeanor?
Sure.
And Class B being the lesser of them.
That's correct. So, and those just vary by the amount of marijuana you may have on you. So in Texas, it's up to 2 ounces, which is a considerable amount of marijuana. If you're carrying around 2 ounces of marijuana, that's you shouldn't have any more than that.
That would be 1 cigarette for some people I know, or 80 for the average American. And so people focused in on that, and then people try to hit you with the tattoo, not guilty, that there is some sort of it's oxymoronic to have, and for those of you at home, it just doesn't make sense. In other words, that you can have a not guilty tattoo, but yet be a prosecutor, a DA. How do you reconcile the two? People have asked me that 100 times. Ask him that question.
The answer that I gave, at least on the campaign trail, was every prosecutor or district attorney should have not guilty on their hearts until I prove my case, is which Matt Manning has done over and over again, and what he's waiting to do right now, and what our attorneys do every day. Until we can prove our case, you're actually not guilty. But with that being said, as a DA, I ran because I wanted to make changes to a system that I saw was broken. Whether I had guilty tattooed on my chest or not guilty, I want to do the best job I can, regardless of what is the markings I have on my body. And the one criticism that I hear is, you have to realize I'm the elected district attorney, but my office has so many people who work day in and day out. And the real reflection of my office is them. They don't get paid much. They work long hours. Their caseload they carry is huge. And so however somebody may feel about me because of maybe the way I look or my race or my tattoos, I ask them to take a look inside themselves and think about the people that are actually doing the work at our office. And so whenever something good comes out of our office, everything goes to them. I mean, they're the ones doing the work. I get to come on TV shows and be in magazines and have my name on the door. But the real praise should go to their hard work. Now, when something doesn't go the right way, then ultimately that should hang on me. I am the elected district attorney, and my name is on the door. And so I get all the bad, but I shouldn't get any of the good.
Heavy is the head that wears the crown.
I hear that all the time.
So, cliches aside, the real body of the work, let's talk about domestic violence, because there may be somebody out there right now who's afraid or fearing for their life, or maybe goes back to the same situation. And a lot of women, I hear the same thing from a lot of women. How could she stay with that man? Or maybe she deserved that because she hasn't left. Or we hear she had it coming from both sides. Or, we hear a lot of that. But the reality of the violence is what? You're on the front lines, you and Mr. Manning and your staff. What is the reality of domestic violence in your eyes, through your lens?
We are going to do everything we can to try to help the situation. Unfortunately, what I've seen is that Corpus Christi is no different, and Nueces County is no different than our neighbors to the south in Clayburgh, our neighbors to the west in Jim Wells, and even up north in San Pat. Domestic violence occurs in every single jurisdiction. It transcends every economic class. It's in poor, middle class, and rich. That's right. It transcends every gender and every race. You have white, brown, and black that it occurs in. And what we are trying to do is change whatever we can with the resources we can. But I also can recognize that it may be something that the court, the DA's office, a defense attorney, and probation and prosecutors may not be able to fix. It's definitely a cultural thing where everybody needs to get involved. If you see something, you need to speak up. If you see something, you need to report it, and it's not okay. It should never be okay to hurt anybody. But ultimately, what we want to do is stop it from happening, right? Convictions don't always mean that it's going to stop something from happening. If someone can get the education, the counseling that they've never had before, and maybe have a different way of thinking, then I think we've hopefully accomplished our goals. One thing that I am proud to say is that with the creation of a domestic violence court here with Judge Klein, she has a better grasp of all the defendants that are coming into the courts regarding domestic violence. And we have two prosecutors who are very good at what they're doing. One is seasoned, Rumi Solis, out of Jim Wells County. He ran for DA, I believe, the time that I was up, and now he's with us, and he's in that court, along with Francisco Martinez, who's from Robstown. And he, they're handling that court, and they're doing a great job, at least from what we hear from individuals or victims, and as well as Judge Klein is happy to have those two attorneys in her office.
Well, I tell you, Judge Klein, now that's a judge's judge. And I mean that. And if I say a judge stinks, I'll let him know on TV, I will. But she is a great judge, as Maderi is. A lot of people worry about politics and say, if we get a conservative in, it's going to be worse for the black and brown community. It's going to be worse for the poor. And that hasn't been the case. To me, I've seen judges like David Stith, who've stepped up. His brother's an ER physician. These people moved from Dallas instead of the other way around and came down here. And so, to me, I don't see that it's a partisan issue. If there were things that over the last, it's gone by 3 years, that you could have changed in those 3 years and you still want to change, what would they be?
One of the things that I wanted, coming into being the DA, I wanted to continue to be a trial lawyer. I mean, when I was in private practice, we did, maybe 23 to 27 trials a year. I mean, that was in the courtroom picking juries and on felony cases. And I know when I was on the campaign trail, I said, I want to try at least maybe 12 cases a year. But as I found, it's just not as easy as I would hope it to be to try a case. There's so much administrative stuff that someone who is not the DA, or at least the first assistant or the second assistant who's in charge of the budgets. We have a budget of $4.7 million. We have 45 lawyers on staff, 35 administrative individuals on staff, as well as 5 investigators, and one's in a task force, which we created, who's generated revenue for the county. And so one of the things that I would wish that I could have done is been in the courtroom a lot more than I am trying cases, because it's something that I truly love doing as a defense attorney, being in front of a jury, making arguments, and finally getting the outcome, and in this situation, justice that is deserved. That's one thing that I would hope to, maybe there'll be time in the future. But as I've met with many district attorneys throughout the country, I'm lucky to be a part of some boards where you have DAs from bigger jurisdictions, and it is very unlikely that they would ever try a case because everyone knows who they are. And so why would a district attorney single out this particular case to try? Most people would indicate that that's an overuse of his power. And so when they told me and I've learned of these things, it kind of makes sense. You shouldn't interject yourself and in a case perhaps, and why would you? It's almost singling out that person. So it's just food for thought and something that I wish perhaps I could have done and that I miss. I miss being in the courtroom and trying cases. And so hopefully after 2020, when I get hopefully reelected, maybe that's something that we'll consider trying to do.
Well, it's interesting that a lot of people don't know that. Now, there have been a few cases that you have tried per year still to keep that craft, to keep that art. You're a very good trial lawyer. I monitored and watched your career with admiration, and a lot of the time you were up against, it was an uphill battle, it seemed like. One of the things that I find that needs to change is over 90% of prosecutors in America are white. I'm not trying to make this a racial issue. It's a factual issue. And so we have 3 times as many Latinos, 5 times as many African Americans incarcerated in prison than we do whites. And especially in the federal system, that's a whole show by itself. But the mandatory minimums, I think. But what I wanted to ask you in the couple of minutes we have left is that have you seen in your experience that those statistics are true, that there are a lot more prosecutors that are white throughout the nation? But does that even change anything? Is the system bigger than race?
So the system there's tons of problems with our system. I've traveled throughout the country and even came from Europe. I visited Berlin on their prison systems, which would blow Americans' minds. I even visited Portugal, where on their drug policies, which they just have a whole different outlook on individuals, who use drugs. It's a health care crisis. They don't criminalize it. And so, as I've traveled throughout the country and even in the world, we have some real issues here, and race is at the core of some of these things. For so long, there have been pipelines from high school to prison for people of color, and the opportunity is very rare for them to go to higher education and then ultimately be an attorney. I'm proud to say, though, that I am one of those individuals, as you are, and even my first assistant. I mean, we have a man of color in the second position at the DA's office. And if you look at our office, I'm very glad to say that it is not, we have a mix of all races and genders there in our office. Women are in leadership positions. People of color are in every single courtroom. As well as our the regular individuals who you would say, white people are there as our allies as well. And so what we're really trying to do is make a difference and change the system. And I'm glad that the judges that are sitting on the bench, it's not a partisan thing, But when you have a DA who wants to level the playing field, it doesn't matter if you have the best attorney. It doesn't matter if you're white, black, brown, or anything in between. If you treat everyone the same, then it kind of helps to stop those disparities between people of color and people who are perhaps maybe of lower economic status. And so that's one of the main things we take into consideration when we're implementing some of the policies that we have.
And the last minute we have, I started kind of backwards like I usually do. My influence were my parents. Both of them went back and got their degrees in their 40s. I don't think I would have made it without them. Half my friends are dead or in prison that I grew up with. And I spent a night or two in the pokey myself. And I think that I learned as a young man those mistakes to straighten up. What influenced you when to become a lawyer? Because it's a big leap, especially the odds are totally against us as Latinos or Hispanics or Mexican Americans, whatever they want to call us. They always say, you know, you're not going to make it. Even our own people say, you're not going to make it. You're not going to make it. It's hard.
Sure. You know, I would say my dad and my mom. You know, Mama loves me no matter what. You know, my dad kicked me out, and my mom enrolled me here at A&M, and but it made a mistake that I caused or that I did is actually how I got to be a lawyer. You know, I got a DWI in Kingsville back in like '98 or '99, and I saw a system where if you take your mom to court and not a lawyer, you're going to get the standard deal that everybody gets. And when a Navy pilot is there for the same thing that I did, a white Navy pilot with a white lawyer, in his case, gets dismissed. You know, that was what kind of sparked my passion and intrigue in something where I thought was wrong. A lot of people do stuff, number one, because they love it, right? I do something because I love it or I get angered. And so a lot of times that has been part of the reason. When I see something that I do not like, I'm going to do the best that I can to change it. And that's how I became a lawyer, and that's how I even ran for public office. You know, I didn't like what I saw at the DA's office, and I wanted to change it. And I could sit back and let it slide, or I could try to do something about it. So that's how I kind of got into it. But, you know, I will agree with you. There are so many people that want to see you fail. Like, they actively either are trying to help you fail or they want you to fail.
Haters.
You know, they're all out there. But whenever, you know, like as you said before, heavy is the crown, you know, heavy is the head that wears the crown. You know, I look back to some of the people that really, really laid it down for what they believed in. You know, me and Matt talk about this all the time. Think of Dr. Martin Luther King. He died for what he believed in. He got jailed for what he believed in. If I get, you know, blasted on the news or even blasted on social media, you know, I'll take it. You know, no one's no one's throwing me in jail. I hope no one is out there plotting against my life. But you know, those are the real pioneers of people who are changing and fighting for their neighborhoods and their people. And I hope just to take a small amount of that and do something great for Nueces County.
And I've been threatened, I've been there, but you know what? We know that God is looking out for us. And, you know, it takes a lot of courage to go against those odds, because the odds are against many Latinos and against many people of color, African American, or in between. You know, a lot of people now have become progressive, and there's this is not, you know, Texas 1960. I hope not. And in the last few minutes left, I know, you know, politics, you don't get a chance now. You're so busy to knock on 200,000 doors. What would you like to tell the people out there? Because I'm going to play this like Stairway to Heaven a lot.
You know, I would like to say, number one, I'm humbled and honored every time that I get to say that I'm the district attorney in Nueces County. I still drive to work in disbelief that, you know, some guy from Agua Dulce, Texas, who graduated with 25 in his class, number one, got a college education, then became a lawyer, and now sits as the elected district attorney, you know, representing a county in a criminal justice system. So I'm humbled and honored to have this position. The best jobs I've ever, people ask me all the time, what's the best job you ever had? I have two. Number one was a defense attorney, and number two is being the DA. And I can tell you that this job is the most rewarding job I've ever had. I owe it to my community to run one more time in 2020, and I look forward to doing the best that I can and continue to make sure that Nueces County is leading the way. You know, people are looking at everything that we're doing in our office, and I'm glad to say that, you know, we are doing things that I hope are changing, and people are watching and emulating, whether it's in you know, Dallas or San Antonio or Houston. But I just want to say thank you out there to all the citizens, and I look forward to continuing to doing good work. And our office is here. When you need something, come by. I'm not a hard man to find. You know, look me up on Facebook, Instagram. Find Matt. He'll find me. I mean, we're here for the community. And, you know, we go out wherever we're invited. We always go. That's our job.
Oh, we want to thank you y quiero recordar a toda la gente allá que me está mirando aquí en televisión, regístrase a votar porque si no votas no puedes quejar después. Involúcrese en el proceso. Get involved. No matter what you vote, just vote. Which side you pick, just get involved. We have such a low voter turnout. And I want to thank you for coming on. It's an honor to have you, and I hope you come back and visit us.
Sure. Thank you, Joe, for having me.
Thank you. We'll be back after these messages.